History is truly at a turning point. We do not yet know the full extent and the systemic and structural changes which will happen. However, we do know that global energy systems, food systems, and supply chains will be deeply affected.
I think this is the worst possible scenario we could have imagined. Is a total game changer as far as international peace and security is concerned.
I think right now, like any other time in our nation's history, we need God.
Probably we should be debating a bill requiring every American to attend a church of their choice on Sunday.
Madre di Dio e nostra, solennemente affidiamo e consacriamo al tuo cuore immacolato noi stessi, la Chiesa e l'umanità intera, in modo speciale la Russia e l'Ucraina.
These are among the darkest hours for Europe since the end of World War II.
The beginning of a large-scale war in Ukraine will be the end of the world order as we know it.
Are we ready for a new world order?
There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it, and we've got to unite the rest of the free world in doing it.
The world has to overcome not only the damage done to our economies and our societies by COVID-19, it also has to confront the repercussions. We have to uphold our responsibility, which we have towards the next generation.
When the topic was on the New World Order, this is something that will touch everybody, and we should all be involved in it, because whether we like it or not, the New World Order will dictate how things go.
With regard to food shortages, yes, we did talk about food shortages. And it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed upon Russia. It's imposed upon an awful lot of countries as well, including European countries and our country as well.
If there's one thing the president got right, it's his statement that there will be food shortages. Sanctions on Russia and attacks around the wheat and corn fields of Ukraine ensure that basic food commodities will be in short supply, and that means much higher prices. And the problem stretches out into the future because there is a shortage of fertilizer. In some countries, that could mean civil unrest and even regime change. Remember, it was a spike in wheat prices that helped set off the Arab Spring.
We are seeing the effects that this war is having on the rising cost of living. This government promises to do everything possible to reduce those effects on the population.
Protesters try to topple a bus and then set it on fire. Demonstrations against Sri Lanka's dire economic situation turned violent for the first time in Colombo. The protesters rallied close to President Gotabaya Rajapaksa's private residence as they demanded his resignation. They accuse his administration of mishandling a crisis that's causing fuel shortages and 13-hour blackouts every day.
Although I have money, I can't buy anything. I can't pump petrol. I can't get gas when my gas canister empties.
There's no wheat, no flour, no milk powder, no electricity, and no gas.
Demonstrators have been taking to the streets across Peru, at times clashing with police.
We have to work double, help each other financially. We have to do overtime, work all day.
Sugar was 2.5 soles a week ago. Right now it's 6. Chicken was 12 soles 2 days ago. Now it's 16.
The American public have generally approved of President Biden's handling of the war, but soaring gas prices and persistent inflation have created major problems for the president and his party as they head into the midterms.
I'd like to start off with some news from Spain, which has hit almost everybody there quite hard. A combination of a truck driver's strike and the economic impacts of the Ukraine war have left a lot of supermarkets quite short of basic foods. And as of this week, Spanish supermarkets are allowed to ration consumer purchases of a certain number of products, including basics like milk and flour.
New this morning, Germany is warning of possible natural gas rationing amid its dispute with Russia. The Kremlin has demanded that so-called unfriendly countries pay in rubles for gas. That's stoking fears of an energy crunch in Europe.
We begin here in Germany, where the government has announced it is activating an early warning plan in preparation for possible shortages in gas deliveries from Russia. Economy Minister Robert Habeck said a crisis team was being established to closely monitor gas supplies. This follows Moscow's demand for payment in rubles, which Germany and other importers have rejected.
To buy Russian gas, they need to open ruble accounts in Russian banks. It is from those accounts that gas will be paid for starting April 1st. If such payments aren't made, we will consider this a failure by the client to comply with obligations.
If these payments are not successful, we would consider it as buyers' failure to meet their commitments, with all the relevant consequences. Nobody sells anything to us for free. Neither are we going to do charity work. That means the current contracts would be brought to a halt.
What underpins a world order is always the financial system. I was brought up with a kind of inside view of how very important the financial structure is to absolutely everything else. And what we're seeing in the world today, I think, is we are on the brink of a dramatic change where we are about to, and I'll say this boldly, we're about to abandon the traditional system of money and accounting and introduce a new one.
I want to get to treasuries because the market's getting a sign that a recession could be on the horizon. It's what everybody's talking about. The yield curve inverting after the closing bell right now.
For more on a potential recession, let's bring in Joe Livornia, chief economist at Natixis. Joe, great to have you with us.
Thank you. Great to be with you guys.
Where do you peg the probability of a recession?
Right now, it's let's say by year end, I'd say about 50-50. It's pretty close.
Russia's actions, including the atrocities committed against the innocent Ukrainians in Bucha, are reprehensible, represent an unacceptable affront to the rules-based global order, and will have enormous economic repercussions in Ukraine and beyond.
And the new one, the new accounting, is what we call blockchain. It means digital. It means having a almost perfect record of every single transaction that happens in the economy, which will give us far greater clarity over what's going on. It also raises huge dangers in terms of the balance of power between states and citizens. Most people think that digital money is crypto and private, but what I see are superpowers introducing digital currency. The Chinese were the first. The U.S. is on the brink, I think, of moving in the same direction. The Europeans have committed to that as well.
The Chinese last month unveiled the world's first digital currency from a major power. Currency that would not be printed, but would exist only in cyberspace on your phone, for example. Is the Fed working on a digital dollar?
We are actually evaluating that. Most major countries are now looking at the possibility of having a digital currency. And really
we are looking carefully, very carefully, at the question of whether we should issue a digital dollar. And it's something that central banks around the world are looking at and doing so appropriately because the technology now enables us to do that.
President Biden signed an executive order today directing the federal government to come up with a plan to regulate cryptocurrencies. The move follows what the Biden administration is calling the, quote, explosive growth of digital assets in recent years. The directive also calls for the exploration and consideration of creating a digital form of the U.S. dollar.
Це не ваші ракети, це не ваші бомби руйнують наші міста. Сьогодні, до речі, зранку були фосфорні бомби. Фосфорні російські бомби. Вбиті знов дорослі і знов вбиті діти.
Tonight, President Biden at an emergency NATO summit declaring the U.S. will take action if there's a chemical attack.
We would respond if he uses it. The nature of the response would depend on the nature of the use.
But when pressed, still no specifics on whether military force is on the table.
It would trigger a response in kind. Whether or not you're asking whether NATO would cross, we'd make that decision at the time.
War in Ukraine to the threats here at home, the Biden administration is sounding the alarm of possible cyber attacks from Russia targeting the nation's financial sector, power grids, and water systems.
FBI Director Christopher Wray said today Russia appears to be preparing to launch cyber attacks in the U.S.
Most cyber attacks don't just happen in an instant. There's activity that leads up to it. There's scanning and researching of victims, scanning for vulnerabilities in systems. So there's a whole range of preparatory work, which is what we've been seeing.
Look, today my administration is issuing new warnings that based on evolving intelligence, Russia may be planning a cyber attack against us. As I said, the magnitude of Russia's cyber capacity is fairly consequential, and it's coming.